You don't have to leave. You can stay. Well, this is probably more interesting. This has to do with the future of InfoSec. If you don't care about the future of InfoSec, you and that beer can leave right now. Just kidding. It's cool. That's why it's recorded. All right, folks, let's begin. So my generation of users remembers back when technology was complex. It had certain basic requirements, such as things like reading, typing, patience. Through mobility and the consumerization of IT, today's generation doesn't have those minimum requirements. Things are very much different. So we're going to talk today about hacking the next generation, the cyber frontier. While you can tell that, yes, there are some Star Trek kind of memes in there. So there's the classic Picard facepalm. And because we mentioned cyber, we had to put a little Riker in there. And we promised not to have any more Star Trek memes throughout the rest of the presentation. We're kind of going back to that concept of mobility and consumerization of IT, enabling young users, because they don't have to have requirements such as reading, typing, and patience. We have this.
9, 2, okay. And 1 for 9, 2. 1, 4, 9, 2, okay. And 1 for 9, 2.
Is it okay to share your password with people? Yeah. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay to share my passcode with people. Who agrees with that? Okay, good. We all are in agreement. So, about a year ago when we took that video, actually, a year ago my son received his tablet. He was around 2 years old. He really didn't speak too much, and now he's going to be, he's 3 now, and he's verbalizing his username. Well, actually, it's just his passcode to get onto his tablet. And there's an incentive behind that. And the incentive is to go and watch videos, to go play a game, to do something that he wants to do so he can interact with the device. So, from the kids are just wired to learn, right? They do it inherently. They do it without trying. And one of the things is we see that as something that we can also then create an environment for them where instead of them sitting there and just learning and having information kind of repeated over and over again until they finally learn it, why not create an environment for them where they can actually play and then use that wiring to learn as the desired byproduct? And that's why we created Hack for Kids. So if you haven't heard about Hack for Kids, and if you have, great, but we're basically just a group of information security and IT makers, people in the community who want to teach internet safety, best practices, as well as give youths a safe place to explore STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And that's really kind of the basis of what we're doing. Now, if you also believe that we're responsible to educate the future of InfoSec and IT, then we have a lot in common, because it is our responsibility to do that. Throughout history, we've all learned from our predecessors, right? And it's our responsibility to make sure that the future of that knowledge is handed down, it's handed down properly, and that kids are not just going and using technology. They're able to do whatever gestures on whatever type of device they're using, but they really understand how it works. And doing that is going to create the next great innovators. So when do we decide to create Hack for Kids? Well, you can see here there's February 2013, there was a tweet that went out. There's a group of people that were going to start a group or a conference called ThoughtCon Kids. And I saw that tweet, and I was like, this sounds awesome. Because for a long time inside of me, I've had this kind of burning desire to do a conference. And there's a lot of conferences going on. You guys know that there's so many cons. Why create another one for the sake of creating one? So when my son here started asking me questions about technology when he was 5 years old, tried to explain it to him. We couldn't find anything that was really appropriate for his age, so we wrote a book. And in that book, it was kind of like much more pictorial representation of what's going on, and then just kind of start to teach kids like a little bit of the basic ins and outs of technology and some good practices and a little bit of ethics. But, you know, now he's grown up. From his perspective, that was a baby book. So what do? So I got really excited when there was this ThoughtCon Kids concept, so we can then participate and then continue to educate future generations of IT and InfoSec. So I replied to them and said, hey guys, you think I could help out? And they said, yeah. And I was like, awesome, this is so cool. I'm so stoked. When can we get on the first call? So now, it grew from 4 organizers to 5. And then the folks over at ThoughtCon that are on the board of ThoughtCon decided not to expand into a kids conference. So when I got the news, I was just totally deflated. That spark in me went to a smolder, and I was just like, well, let me just continue doing what I'm doing, organizing Minecraft clubs for kids, doing stuff with scouting. And it just was like, that's just how it's going to be. But then after some time, I thought, well, why don't I just start to organize this event? And kind of talking to some other people, and they said, yeah, we really need to do this. So we started one in Chicago back in 2014. So this was on August 23rd, 2014, last year. So we just started the conference. There's a bunch of people that were there. We had just about 40 kids and a bunch of staff and some adults. So we're just around 100 people. In fact, I think I know for sure one of those people are in this room. He just entered. How you doing? And then we wanted to provide things like, there was one person I met that had his own homemade hacks. And I was like, wow, that looks really cool. He showed me a picture of a robot made from a galvanized garbage can and pail with Arduinos and Wi-Fi controllers, and there was a tablet on the front with our website. And that's the same kid that you saw in the tablet video earlier. He was a bit younger, and he wasn't really speaking much, but he was pretty afraid of that robot because it was a little bit larger than him. But then he noticed, I don't know if you could see it, there's a pail of Lifesaver candy. So his incentive was candy, and he overcame his fear. We do other things with electrical engineering, so this is some stuff with snap circuits that we do. We also, this guy here, I introduced him to Arduino. We'll just call him Crafty Coder. So Crafty Coder, I showed him an Arduino, and I did the blinky light sketch. And I go, isn't that cool? We got the light to blink. And he goes, can you make it blink Morse code? So talk about a kid wanting to challenge their parent. So we sat down and went, all right, let's go through this. So we showed, we changed the different intervals for the light blinking. Then we figured out dot. Then we figured out dash. And then we just kind of did like the S and SOS. And it was a lot of commands. And so wouldn't there be a better way to do this? So we then broke those commands down into functions called dot and dash. And then we created the alphabet based on calling the functions dot and dash. So I was showing him how you can do recursive function calls. And it was like, actually, this was actually pretty cool. So then we incorporated that into Hack for Kids as a part of our scavenger hunt. So, I mean, who in this room, you know what Morse code is, but who knows it? Like, who has it memorized? I can expect maybe some ex-military people, but not too many people memorize Morse code anymore. You learn SOS, and that's kind of where your education ends. So that's one of the things that we're doing. We want to reintroduce how important knowing something as simple as Morse code, because it's an international way to communicate. So if somebody speaks Flemish or French or whatever, you're using Morse code the same way we do, which is actually pretty cool. Who here was one of those kinds of kids that like to take technology apart and probably got in trouble a few times, maybe got hurt a couple times too? Quick story, personal story. I was a bit younger than my son. I was probably about 8 or 9. And you remember when TVs were like a piece of furniture in your home, right? So we had this TV, and it was really cool, and I wanted to see the people that were like on the inside, so I got a screwdriver and I take the back off. And there were no people, but there was all these little light bulbs in there with some metals in there, basically transistors. And I was like, this is kind of cool. Let me go touch one. Well, it was still pretty hot because the TV just got turned off. So I learned that lesson that day. My parents, I don't know where they were, but there was nobody watching me. There was no mentor. And then the other thing is I forgot to unplug it. So, having a screwdriver in my hand, reaching inside of the TV, not a good idea. But that was me. And luckily I survived it. So, if you're kind of like that, so what we've done here, we provided this technology destruction village for the kids so they can reverse engineer home-based appliances or whatever. Now, before you start thinking about microwaves, it's really like home routers or small firewalls, DVD players, VHS players, remote controls, telephones, like little safe telephones. We've had some PDAs, Game Boys, keyboards. They love taking about keyboards because they're popping the keys out. Oh, my P's were popping, sorry. They're popping the keys out and kind of flinging them on one another. So they're having a good time, but they get to really kind of see how it works. Because this guy here, when I was still playing World of Warcraft, and I was like holding him in my arm when he was like 2 months old, he was kind of like batting at the keyboard. And when you think about it, that was like his real first connection with a computer, is the keys in the video, right? So being able to see inside is a really big deal for them. So what is Hack for Kids? Well, first off, we are a registered 501c3 with the IRS. So that means we are a charity and we're an education-based charity. So that means there's no motivation here to make a profit. There's really nobody at all being paid. Actually, there is nobody being paid on payroll at Hack for Kids or 1099 or what have you. Everybody, it's all volunteer-based. We got our 501c3 earlier this year. Part of my background, not only in IT and information security, is also my college education and some professional work experiences in accounting. So having that base knowledge was really helpful. I also worked when I lived in New York, the city of New York, so I kind of understand the public servant mentality a little bit. So I waited until right after New Year to file our 501c3, thinking that we had a really small form, like maybe 4 pages, versus someone who might have been around for a while, had a lot of transactions, over $250,000 in funding. They've got a bigger form. So when you come back from the holidays, you're going to want to do the big form or the little one? You want to do the little one. So my tip to you is if you ever want to create a 501c3 or some kind of charity, do it when you know that the employees are not going to want to work too hard, and make sure that you don't have too many transactions when you do it. Because some places, some groups wait, like a hackerspace might wait 3 or 4 years and go, we're going to file for 501c3, but because they've had so many transactions, it's a longer review process. So my tip to you, we filed, I think it was January 3rd online. I think their website was broken. I think it might have actually went through on the 4th, and on the 9th, we got approved, which is pretty hard to do. It actually was pretty cool, so we're thrilled about it if you haven't been able to tell by my enthusiasm. So one of the other things that we do, so we started our first event in Chicago, as you saw from the pictures, but then kind of branching out to other cities independently is a big challenge. And fortunately, knowing other people that run conferences like GrrCON and Circle City Con made it practical to partner up with them. Plus, they wanted to do something too. So now it's really kind of a win-win, where at Circle City Con, we had a Hack for Kids Village. We just did something on Sunday with GrrCON, so we did a Hack for Kids GrrCON on Sunday, and that was our first international Hack for Kids, and it was done in 3 languages. I think the person that came the furthest as a child was from Saudi Arabia. But parents are from the States, they're just stationed in Saudi Arabia and flew out to Belgium, which I think was pretty darn cool. And they had a lot of fun. They learned a lot. And we even delivered a safe and secure online presentation in 3 languages. And then, obviously, today. So tomorrow we're doing a Hack for Kids here at GrrCON. Well, at this point, maybe inside of you, you're thinking, like, this is a great idea. We might want to do one, or you organize a B-Sides or some other conference, and you want to do something like this. Well, we have a Google form that we need to finish populating once we kind of get caught up, because we had a lot going on. We'll have a form for you to fill out. This link will still be active, but don't worry about writing it down now. This is all being recorded. The Prezi will be made available online. And if you do want to do something or even kind of help us out, maybe you want to branch into something else, let us know and fill out the form. We'll discuss. Another point is at Hack for Kids, we take child protection very seriously. It's kind of, when you see the punchline, the joke is not as funny. That's one of my other kids. So, very seriously, actually, a lot of my training comes from Boy Scouts of America with youth protection and adult protection type training, and really good practices like what the Boy Scouts calls 2-deep leadership. Sound familiar to anybody? We just call it a 2-to-1 ratio. I got a couple of head nods. What that really means is there's never one child left alone with no less than 2 adults. And it actually protects all the parties. So this way, if it's a one-to-one, you know, aside from parent and child, biological or chaperone link. So if I didn't know him and we were alone, maybe he wants to tell me some kind of joke that's got some inappropriate content. And I feel a little awkward about it, but I don't want to make him feel bad, so I kind of play along and humor him. He goes back to his parents and says, oh, I told Mr. Schwartzberg this really funny joke about whatever, you know, inappropriate content, insert here. And he thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And then his parents go, well, why is he talking to you about those kinds of things? And now, while I'm trying to be a nice guy, I'm now being implicated for some wrongdoing, which wasn't true. So that's why we have this process of we never leave any kids alone without at least 2 adults. Now you might be thinking about restrooms. What do we do there? Well, harder access to control. We don't post security in front of the restroom, but it's basically common sense. You walk into a restroom, there's a kid in there by themselves, you go outside and wait. Then when the kid leaves, you can go in. If you're in there already and a kid walks in alone, quickly finish your business and get out. Just very basic common sense to protect all parties. The other challenge that we have, I'll cover that one soon, is volunteers. So we don't generally accept any volunteer off the street. You know, he might be a really nice guy, but he ain't looking like one right now. And the reason is, again, to protect the kids. So if we have a vetting process, so for example, there's Robert Wagner. He's on the board. I've known Robert for a number of years. I've also know people who know Robert, so they were kind of, you can almost consider that fourth factor in authentication. It's not, you know, something you have or something you are or something you know. It's who you know or someone you know. And I asked around, and before I, wanted Robert to help us out, like, everyone said, yeah, he's really cool, and he's safe, and, he's fine. But if we've had some people that just kind of come up after these presentations, they're like, I really want to help out. Okay, so what do you do with kids today? So we kind of talk them through it. We do have a hidden volunteer page, so if someone sounds like they're okay, like, for example, someone who's a soccer coach, and every year that soccer organization is going through some kind of youth protection training and doing a background check again on the adults, we're cool with that. We might just want a letter saying, they're good. Also, things with like Safe and Secure Online with the IC² Congress Foundation, they do their own background checks on people. So we've had some people do a Safe and Secure Online presentation. We know that they do a background check, and then we let them come in, they do the presentation, but they don't get to really hang out. They can have lunch, and then they go. So if you're thinking about volunteering, we can discuss that a little further. Photography is another thing that we like to control. So here in this particular case, nobody can recognize this kid. I don't know who he is. But we instruct the photographers very specifically, take photos that are like back ahead or slight profile. So this way, if we do have anything that we put publicly on Facebook or wherever, on social media, our website, the kids are safe. What you see here is a kid using snap circuits. They got an Arduino that blinks Morse code. And that's the important message for you to see. You don't need to know who that kid is, and in fact, I guess maybe just his parents and close family might even know. And here's another example where there's a youth, we call them tyros, which means learned or kind of like a novice or like a beginner. One of the staff came up with that name. And you don't know if this tyro is a boy or a girl. You just see some curly hair. You don't know, but you see a parent helping the tyro with assembling a popsicle stick catapult. So we have controls on photography, and it always goes right from the photographer's SD card to me, and I control all the photography. So this way, if we want to use something in like sponsorship type of documentation, we have it, or anything that we share. Like if there's an actual face of the child, then we send that to the parents with a private link. These are the these are the badges that we've been using for the past year. So these tyros have actually their own symbol. Which is that symbol that's the arrow that's pointing downward. You can see the glider is on there. You guys know the glider, right? Yeah? No? It's the hacker symbol, if you've never heard of the glider before. But this symbol we created for the tyros, that arrow is actually a Nordic symbol, meaning strength and warrior. And then, so that's a tyre, T-Y-R, tyro, add the O, you got the circle. And the circle is representing the unity of the hacker community, as well as the hacker's never-ending thirst for knowledge, right? Once you kind of look at something from one angle and you're like, oh, I got it to do this. And then you're like, well, let me just pivot it a little bit more, and oh, look, I made it do this. or, I'm able to break something, and let me see if I can break it further. That's a part of what we are, and that's a part of what these kids kind of have inside of them, and that's what we're trying to nurture appropriately. So nobody else but Tyros have that symbol on their badge. You can't see it, but even my badge doesn't have it on. So, why and where Hack for Kids, right? There's other conferences out there for kids, such as Roots Asylum, formerly known as DEF CON Kids, which is kind of one of the other catalysts for us wanting to do Hack for Kids, and even though ThoughtCon Kids kind of was also part of that catalyst. Because when I first went to DEF CON and told him, oh, by the way, there was this kid that was there that was doing soldering, he's like, I want to go. But do I really want to bring my son with me, who was like 8 years old, to DEF CON Kids? Which, don't take that the wrong way. It's, I'm up late, I'm working a booth, I'm out with people drinking. It's just not the appropriate thing as a parent for me to bring him. If I had a chaperone that was willing to be there, I think that makes sense, but I just wouldn't want to subject him to the long days, short hours, lack of meals. The 3-2-1 rule. So there's Roots Asylum, which is great. They're a fantastic conference. Actually, Robert and I got to get a walkthrough, and they have similar security protocols where we were not left alone. We did not have a child to chaperone us, so we had an adult that was a part of their staff walk us around the venue. In San Francisco, so that's in Vegas, and then in San Francisco, there's Hack Kid. It's actually, correction, San Jose, south of San Francisco, which is another great con, but they have one kind of thing in common, right? West Coast based. So what about the rest of the world? We kind of were like, well, if there's kids in the West Coast or people flying to the West Coast with their kids to do this, not everybody can afford that. So we were trying to bring Hack for Kids to them. And with our limited resources, we started in Chicago, then we went to Indianapolis, then we went to Brussels. Thanks to GrrCON, who really kind of sponsored everything, which was fantastic. And now we're here today in GrrCON. So if you have even kind of like an inkling inside of you, like, hey, you know what? We want one in Dallas. We want one in Washington, D.C. We want one in Anchorage, Alaska. If anyone from Anchorage, Alaska? Okay. Let us know, because we would work with somebody to try and even do an organization, like have them organize it there, but we would help. It wouldn't be more like, hey, go ahead, good luck, go get some money, go figure it out. No, we want to help kind of, help them be successful. So, who are the people behind Hack for Kids, or how are we teaching them? So here's some kind of the content that we have. So we have a speaking track. Any age can submit to our CFP. So whether you're 8 to 80, feel free. We also have a bunch of activity stations, and this one right here is the one that I mentioned before, building a popsicle stick catapult. It's kind of like a MacGyver thing, right? They're doing engineering, but it's popsicle sticks, glue gun, rubber bands, and a plastic spoon. Build me a weapon. A catapult. That was an intentional slip. We do workshops. So I don't know if you know Beltface. He was doing one of our workshops there as a web app pen testing one, which was really very successful. And there's Robert doing the Safe and Secure Online presentation where, again, if you're not familiar with that, it just, in summary, it's teaching them good password practices. It's teaching them to be careful about what you put in social media. It's teaching them anti-bullying online. So stuff like that. So kind of going back to the speaking a little bit. So here, I don't know if you guys know Ruben Paul. He was our very first keynote ever. So who more appropriate than a 9-year-old to deliver cybersecurity to kids than a kid that's going and doing talks all around the world about cyber safety for kids. So it was pretty awesome. So we're very lucky to have him. But we've had other adults give great talks, people in their 30s, talking about when when we stop going outside. Great talk by Johnny Christmas at Hack for Kids. So tomorrow, we're going to be doing a bunch of different things with the kids. So these activity stations are really designed to be like 15 to 20 minutes of something to kind of stimulate their curiosity. They're all mainly STEM-based. So this one is, again, with building a popsicle stick, but we're also going to do stuff with Python coding. We're going to do the technology reverse engineering. We got snap circuits for electrical engineering. We're doing sumo bots. Every time I say that, I get chills. They're going to be building their own robot that's going to be battling with another kid's robot for points. And then whoever is in the pit the longest and earns the most points at the end of the day gets a gift card. What a great incentive, right? Kind of going back to what we were saying before. They're wired to learn. They want to do this, but what they're learning is building a device, and then they're testing their device to withstand unexpected or unknown adverse or aggressive forces, which I think is pretty exciting. So in the STEM station, one of the things that we did, we give them like a list of stuff, and if they're into scouting and they want to learn more, like if they're working on their STEM Nova badge, we have, like, you can see the little gears and then that blue circle. They can also get credit to that. So there's like this really nice overlap between what we're doing and what they might also already be doing in their personal lives with scouting or something else. Other workshops that we've done besides Bellface's web app pen testing, tomorrow we're doing a Raspberry Pi intro where adults are like, I want to go to that. It's essentially the whole unboxing to getting the device online, to getting into the device, and then hooking up a robotic servo motor, and then controlling it and having it do some tricks. A lot of fun. Even Crafty Coder here, he wanted to build a Minecraft server. So one of our first workshops was, you want to build a Minecraft server? We want you to learn Linux. You're going to learn Linux building a Minecraft server. So that was effective. I mean, it was developing the Linux skills and kind of the process of installing an app on Linux. And then they got to play, and it was a lot of fun, right? Yeah, he said, yeah. So other things that we do within the activity station, so specifically this one for Python, it's really designed for kids that have, or tyros that have no prior experience. So they begin with hello world, right? Simple print statement. Then it's getting input from standard in, then building on and then creating lists and combining lists. So once we go through the exercises, then they start to get challenges, and these challenges, once they complete the challenges, they get credit or an entry or into our drawing at the end. So they'll get like a business card, they get a hole punch, and then we'll see their name on the back, and based on the number of hole punches they receive, then they can get that many entries into the drawing for the prizes. And for example, I got prizes coming up soon, but I'll tell you what the prizes are. So here's another challenge called Dizzy Turtle, and then there's the Fibonacci series, which some adults are still working on that one, that are helping us out, but none of the kids are able to figure that one out yet. But it's fine. The content goes up on our website and our library, so hackforkids.com, HAK, the number 4, KIDZ.com. Click on the library. So if there's kids that you know who are curious about crypto or build their own Minecraft server or have other presentations that we've done about stuff, they can absolutely go there and see that content. So everything that we're doing this year, once that's done, we're going to then upload it to the website, and then that'll be available for anyone as a refresher or even as something new to them. So the prizes, that's what a lot of our funding goes to, running the conference, giving stuff to the kids, and then giving out these prizes. So this year, the big grand prize at a lot of the conferences has been a virtual Minecraft server. So they basically get a Linux box in the cloud, and then they can go and code, mod, do whatever they want. We've been giving out some snap circuits in the past. We give out some books called Python for Kids. No Starch Press is a sponsor, so we've been able to give those out. So we got a bunch of books for tomorrow. Arduino, low-powered platforms are a lot of fun, so we teach them how to use that in some of through the Morse code, but then they can go and have one of their own and go nuts. The DC Darknet badges. Who's familiar with this? I had it up earlier. So DC for DEF CON, so Darknet is a competition at DEF CON, and the Darknet competition is just a bunch of puzzles. It goes on, it's online. One of the puzzles is building or purchasing this badge, and it's a soldering kit project. So they take you through soldering it. So this is my badge. I got one for him, so it was really nice bonding exercises. We're sharing the soldering iron, we build it out, and then these devices talk to one another. When they're idle, they blink a Morse code message. There's some crypto messages on the back, so you can also try to decode that. And then that, because that's like a 18 mega, I think it's a 238. So it's Arduino Duolinova. It's also preloaded with a sketch to be a TV Be Gone. So when the kids heard that they could turn TVs off in Best Buy with this little tiny badge, they were thrilled. They want one. They were losing their minds. His friend was really unhappy when he didn't win one, like to point of tears, but it's part of character building. So how do we know if we're successful? Well, it's really hard to know, and we're trying to figure out new ways. So specifically things like this Safe and Secure Online presentation, without getting some feedback directly from individuals, like, hey, somebody was bullying me, and the training that you gave us helped me. We don't know, but we're just hoping that we're being successful. Other things are surveys. So we use surveys as a way to get much more empirical data back, but it's only really as empirical as the people that want to give it to us. So in this particular survey, the question was how many Hack for Kids attended, including this one, and the answers were 1, 2, and 3, because we've only had up to 3. So when I asked him, what does that mean? He goes, well, how many Hack for Kids I've actually attended? Okay, that's what the question meant. But when I asked my wife, and this is not to defame my wife, it was just a different perspective, she thought it meant how many kids are there. So we've had actually people write in number 4 because they had 4 kids with them. So it really kind of threw the data off, and we had to try to figure out how to normalize it. And that's some of the challenges with surveys. So if you ever do surveys for anything, my advice to you is get other people to look at it. Even some of these other sections, like for example this workshop, the kids in Chicago were only able to go to one workshop, but when we gave them the survey, they provided feedback for both. So which one did they go to? Because it was all anonymous. So now again the data is skewed. So we didn't, we did the best we could. But with some of that data, I tried to build an infographic, and I'm not a really good graphic designer, so did my best. But here we have this data that we can share. In Chicago, we grew. Last year we had 40 kids, but only really about 38 showed up. This year we had 53 kids, and I think all of them showed up. The breakdown between those was 39 boys, 14 girls. Of those 53 kids, 36 boys, that was their first time ever going to a Hack for Kids, and 12 girls, their very first time going to a Hack for Kids. So who's first time GrrCON? Got a few. Pretty cool, right? I mean, it's interesting stuff. So from their perspective, as you're absorbing all this information and meeting new people and seeing all the cool stuff around, they had the same type of experience, but really kind of geared to things that they want to know about. 2 boys, 2 girls, that was their second Hack for Kids, and then 1 kid, it was his third. You guess who that was? Age range, this is kind of tricky for us, because we do have a range of 7 to 17, because once they're 18 and they're no longer a minor, things kind of get a little interesting with insurance and stuff like that, so we left it between 7 and 17. And it seems like our sweet spot's between 8 and 12, because the 13 to 17 range, either we're not getting out to the high schools and the middle schools early enough to kind of get on their radar, or they just might not be interested because they're doing cool things like Cyber Patriot or MITRE or something else. So we're trying to figure out how to kind of get more into that age group. And then we had some kids that were under 8, which we found some of them really kind of gravitated to the activities, and others were just on their parents' device. So it's a tough one. A little bit more insight. So the activity station is the most popular. Technology Destruction Village. Who doesn't like taking shit apart? I mean, come on. It's a lot of fun. But the one that was the most attended, Lockpick Village. Who remembers popping their first lock? It was a lot of fun. And you wanted to keep trying harder and harder locks, and you wanted to pick more. So of the Lockpick Village, 28 kids attended. Of that list, you could see that there was 12 that were able to pop up to 5 pins, but 1 kid only popped 5 pins. They didn't do anything else. So I think that's pretty impressive that if you've never popped the lock before and you're popping 5 pins, you got a hidden talent. Hopefully you use those powers for good and not evil. 6 pins, you could see that there were 6 kids that kind of went all the way up to the 6th pin, and then 1 kid went in there and popped and there's really no gender real significance there, but it's just a girl or boy because I just picked those icons randomly. And then of the cuffs, you could see that of the 28, 9 kids were able to pick their way out of cuffs, which was kind of interesting. But only 1 kid went up, popped the cuffs, and was like, I'm done. I don't know what their motivation was there. Maybe they want to be like the next Houdini or something, but that was kind of an interesting piece of data. Love to share. Under the network security activity station that we did, so we basically had them using Wireshark. So we had data going back and forth, and there was a bunch of challenges, and they had to learn how to read the packets, which is actually kind of cool also, and it's by itself. So 9 kids attended that station, and then 7 of 9 completed all of the exercises. And then there was a hidden file challenge, which they basically had to find the packet to take them to a link that was on our website, which had a hidden message. And of that, it looks like 7 of those kids are, again, 7 of 9 were able to complete that challenge. Python for Kids station, 10 kids attended that station, and then got 10 that actually got up to exercise 3, and then kind of bailed. And they kind of, either it wasn't for them or what have you, but then 2 of them got as far as the second challenge. The third challenge was the Fibonacci series, which none of them were able to do. So we're going to leave that in there just to kind of see if someone can do that. And that would actually be pretty cool. Maybe we should offer a prize. So the first kid that can solve the Fibonacci series challenge in Python that learned that day, we give them like a $25 gift card or something. Spy math. How cool does spy math sound? If we ask the kids, hey, do you want to go learn some monoalphabetic substitution ciphers? What do you think is going to happen? They'll probably start to fall asleep like some of you are right now. The idea is you want to make it interesting, and it's all about context and kind of giving it to a context that they care about. So when you say, hey, you want to learn about spy math? I'm like, yeah. And I give that credit to Robert. He comes up with these great ideas. So he's like, let's call it spy math. And he's like, yeah, let's call it spy math. And we do some things like even number theory. And in that, 2 kids actually went as far as proving the math. That was not a requirement, but they loved the math so much, they went as far as proofs. Who likes doing proofs? But we found some kids that do. So in the TDV, or the Technology Destruction Village, we had 14 kids attended. There were 7 components that they had identified. Of that, 5 kids successfully identified all 7 components. Excuse me. And it looks like 14 of the kids knew what a capacitor was, which is kind of cool. So here, instead of kind of going through some comments, why don't you turn your mic on? I'm going to have you hear it directly from the mouth of babes. So, Crafty Coder, what do you like about Hack for Kids?
Well, what I really like about it is there's a ton of stuff to do, and it's really hard to get bored when you're doing the stuff, because you have a day to do everything, and sometimes you can't even complete it all. So that's really cool. I like that. I like that.
Awesome. What do you think other kids like about Hack for Kids?
I think what they like is the Lockpick Village and Technology Destruction Village, because who doesn't like destroying technology that's like $4 or $5 that you can't do at home?
If you know somebody who you think wants to take technology apart, and again, that was another idea from one of the volunteers, where she was like, oh yeah, I'd like to go to Goodwill and I'll spend like maybe $10 and buy my son 3 or 4 different things and let him just kind of sit there and take it apart, and then they do like e-waste recycling. So if you know somebody, I mean, even with the holidays coming up, you can wrap up some old tech that you buy from Goodwill. They're going to open it up and be like, what is this? They're going to hopefully get like a new Xbox or something. Like, you could take that apart, and here's a toolkit that I also bought for you as well. And they're like, awesome! It's like giving a kid a cardboard box. It's really a lot of fun. So, last question. What do you think that Hack for Kids can do in the future?
I think that, we normally, if you don't attend to every single one that year, which I don't think a lot of kids are going to do, in 1 year is a lot of time, so you're probably going to forget a lot of stuff that you learned that year. So what I think that Hack for Kids could do is have something on a website or something you can do at home to practice what you learned at Hack for Kids other than the library, like tutorials or videos or something like that.
Good job. Thank you. So, as you know, Crafty Coder is biologically related to me, but I thought we'd change this one up a little bit. Since he's here with us, I thought hearing from his perspective would be much more valuable and something I think you might want to communicate versus just the middle-aged fat man continue talking about how cool Hack for Kids is. You can laugh anytime you want. I love self-deprecating humor. So just kind of finishing off the journey up the mountain with Hack for Kids, you guys got a better sense of who we are, what we're doing, what our mission is, and the lives that we're trying to change and impact. Last story, since again, nobody gets paid, the way we get actual, like, the gratification, or what I just call payday, is when we find out that one of the tyros discovered something new, not just it was new technology, but knew about themselves. And their parents didn't know about it. And as I continue to talk about this, I keep getting chills. For example, when we were at Circle City Con in Indianapolis, a 14-year-old boy, he came in there, Dad dropped him off, and he was like, yep, yeah, my kid's going to do some stuff in here. I'm going to go sit in some talks, have a nice day. What time should I pick him up? And the youth sat down, and right there was a crypto station. Never done crypto before. So we start going through some binary conversions, some base 64, rotation 13, and some other stuff, or wrote 13, and some other stuff that we had. And he loved it. We go to lunch. We came back a little late. He was standing in front of the room that was locked for a half hour waiting for us to come back. And then he continued, and we had like about 8 challenges. He goes, I'm not leaving until I get all of these. He did nothing else except crypto. When I started to talk to his dad through email, because he was like, oh, you're going to do one in Chicago too? My son wants to go. You guys are going to have new challenges. And I go, were you the dad of the kid that was like there all day? Yeah. He impressed the heck out of us. We've never seen a kid gravitate to crypto for so long and discover inside of themselves that passion for wanting to do cryptanalysis. And he goes, really? Because he told me he was there and that he liked it. And that was about the extent of the conversation. I said, you got to go further with this. There's something inside of him that really needs to be explored. And he goes, well, thanks a lot. We do really appreciate, you guys introducing this to him and keep doing the great stuff that you're doing. And that to us is the payday. That's the point where we've realized that with this one person, we may have changed not just his life, but his parents' perspective of him, right? Because your parents are your biggest critics, aside from your spouse. And then, that's another joke. But then when you get that third-party confirmation, maybe, hopefully, like, he might be like the next great Teher El Gamel, right? He might come up with some great algorithm that starts to protect a lot of our data, or he figures out how to break certain codes to save lives. I mean, we don't know, but hopefully we make a difference. So with that, I do want to thank everybody for sticking through this, your time and attention today. Here's how you can follow us on Twitter. We're at Hack for Kids. I'm David Schwartzberg. I really don't talk about myself at all during this because I'm completely irrelevant compared to what we're doing. And I do want to thank Mobile Iron because they're sponsoring me to be here today. You notice that their logo is in the slides and also here. So check out Mobile Iron because great products for managing your mobile devices. And there's some references there to some other stuff. If you don't have this, the Prezi will be available online. I think it's already made public. Once again, thank you. This was Hacking the Next Generation, the Cyber Frontier. I'm Dave Schwartzberg, and this is Crafty Coder. Have a great day.